Katika mashindano haya ya Kipkeino Classic, na mlishiriki jukwaa moja mkakosoana kwa heshima, lakini wanasiasa wa pande zote mbili, serikali Kenya Kwanza na upande wa muungano wa Azimio, wanapokuwa katika majukwaa na wafuasi wao wanadhihirisha cheche, na baadhi ya wafuasi wanachukulia hili kama swala la uadui. Utawaambia nini? Na zaidi pia ulisema kwamba unajua hatma ya maandamano ya Raila Odinga. Je, umeanza kuishughulikia hiyo hatma?
Kwanza pale tulikutana ni mahala pa mazishi, na ni kawaida kama viongozi, kwa sababu lile jambo ni jambo ambalo linatufaa sote tushughulikie, na ilikuwa ni nafasi nzuri ya pia kuzungumzia mambo yaliyoko katika taifa letu la Kenya. Pale kiongozi wa upinzani alisema vile aliona, akasema punda amechoka, akasema mimi siambiwi ukweli, ushuru nisipandishe, na mimi pia nikachukua muda nimueleze, na akasema ananijua, na ni kweli kwa sababu nimefanya kazi na yeye, tulikuwa pamoja katika chama. Pia nikachukua hiyo nafasi kusema pia vile ananijua na mimi namuelewa. Pia na kumsoma. Yeah. So, ikawa ni nafasi nzuri yeye aseme na mimi pia nikasema. Na pale pia nilipata nafasi ya kueleza wananchi wa Kenya kwamba hili propaganda, serikali hii tu kazi yake ni kuongeza ushuru, ni kuongeza ushuru. Nikamweleza tumepunguza ushuru zaidi ya ile tumeongeza. Tumeondoa bilioni 15, bilioni 500 ambayo ingekuwa katika budget kama wao ndio wangeendesha serikali. Tumeondoa ushuru kwa mambo ya fertilizer, raw material. Tumeondoa ushuru kwa mambo ya clinker, kwa simiti. Tumeondoa ushuru kwa samaki. Tumeondoa ushuru kwa mambo ya furniture. Tumeondoa ushuru kwa mambo ya mahospitali, equipment ya hospitali. Tumeondoa ushuru kwa chuma na simiti, kwa sababu tunataka kukuza manufacturing yetu. Tumeondoa ushuru katika sehemu karibu 15. So sio kweli hii porojo inaendeshwa na wenzetu wa upinzani wakisaidiwa na vyombo vya habari kwamba serikali hii inaendesha tu mambo ya kuongeza ushuru. Sio ukweli bana.
Na utawaambia nini vijana ambao ni wafuasi wenu kutoka pande zote mbili, upande wa Kenya Kwanza na upande wa Azimio, ambao wanachukulia tofauti zenu za kisiasa kama uadui ama swala la kufa kupona?
Tofauti za siasa ni tofauti ya maoni na tofauti ya sera. Nilimweleza ule ndugu yangu, na namheshimu kwa sababu ni mzee, na mheshimu kwa sababu ni kiongozi. Nikamweleza kwa heshima ya kwamba wewe unaamini kusubsidize consumption, ambayo ni njia moja, lakini kwangu mimi ni njia bure. Mimi naamini kwa kusubsidize production. Ndio tofauti, maoni tofauti. Lakini baada ya ile mkutano, si tulikuwa pamoja Kasarani, tukaendesha, tukaona riadha ikiendelea.
Na naibu wa rais hakuwa pale Kasarani.
Leo tukakuwa pale.
Mlifanya mazungumzo yote ya kando kuhusu masuala ya kitaifa?
Tulikuwa hapo
mkizungumza chochote kuhusu
Wacheni fitina bwana.
Mr. President,
uwepo wako na ukaribu wako, msisome mambo ambayo hayako.
Uwepo wako kuzungumza chochote kuhusu mazungumzo kati ya serikali na Kenya Kwanza na Azimio.
Wewe unasema my deputy hakuwa Kasarani.
Ni huyo amesema.
Ni mimi ndiye aliyesema.
Sasa nakuuliza wewe, alikuwa amekuambia atakuwa Kasarani? Ndio ukasema mbona aliniambia atakuja Kasarani?
Picha iliyotambwa mtandaoni na inazungumziwa na Wakenya kwamba ukaribu wako
naibu wangu wa rais alikuwa na shughuli Nyeri
na Raila Odinga.
Sasa ulikuwa unataka aje Kasarani afanye nini? Na alikuwa na shughuli Nyeri.
Okay, Mr. President, je, kuna tokota mkono wa heri wa handshake kati yako na Raila Odinga? Waona jana na hata leo.
Allow me, Mr. President, to get to the substance element of that conversation in Nyandarua County yesterday. And you premised your government on growing the revenue streams and scaling down on borrowing. That's what you campaigned on?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I am spot on.
Okay. Allow me to quote this Treasury data, which shows between October and April, that is last year until April the previous month. Treasury data shows that the new administration, the Kenya Kwanza administration, tapped into loans worth 425 billion Kenya shillings, which is more than 434.6 billion that the Jubilee government borrowed in the same period when it came to power in 2013. You are therefore above by what Uhuru borrowed at the same period by 17.4 billion Kenya shillings. Why the contradictory position?
Yeah, it's not contradictory.
Why borrow more?
The budget, my friend, we are using is Uhuru's budget. The budget you will hold me to account is the one we are discussing. You know, when you have a budget in place, even if you came into office today, unless you go to Parliament to change the way the budget is funded, you can't. They had budgeted to borrow in that budget. They had budgeted to borrow 1.1 trillion. I came using the supplementary budget. I cut it down by 300 billion, right? But you see, the train had left the station. So the borrowing was more because in the budget that was read and passed by Parliament, it was meant to be more. All I did is that it wasn't as big as they had anticipated. They had actually wanted to borrow 1.1 trillion.
Your Excellency,
which I cut down.
Budget deficits as at June last year for the current financial year, the budget deficit that had been approved by Parliament was 833 billion shillings. Of course, the Uhuru administration was there.
That was a false number, because when we came into office, we found that they had not factored about 130 billion of pending bills. They had not factored almost 90 billion that was meant to be given to counties. They were hiding figures. And that is why I want to run a transparent government. I want to run a government that's accountable. I want my minister and my administration to be asked questions. And that is why I believe in accountability, and I want an opposition that will hold the government to account. And that is why I am against the handshake. Because in a handshake situation, there is no accountability. That is how a government can hide borrowing the way it was hidden in the last budget.
What then will you tell the people? If I look at just the figures of the deficits and how much it keeps fluctuating, at the beginning of a financial year, there is what the National Treasury takes to Parliament, and it's approved as a budget and a deficit. And if I look throughout the year, it always gets adjusted halfway through or midway through the year. 2014-2015, the approved deficit was 417 billion shillings. By the end of the financial year, it had risen to 533 billion shillings, a jump of 28%. If I just go into another one, 2018-2019, the approved deficit was 608 billion shillings. It jumped to 734, 21% jump in deficit. This time, you're going to Parliament seeking a deficit of 664 billion shillings and saying, I want to borrow and stay within this. Are you telling the people of Kenya that the Kenya Kwanza administration in the first year will not go back to Parliament and seek to borrow more than 664 billion?
Let me first explain why when government says we are going to have this deficit, sometimes they have to borrow more because what they had anticipated to collect, they could not collect. Correct. That's why collection is very important. Number one. Number two, sometimes the measures they want to use to raise the revenue, sometimes they don't pass in Parliament. So if a certain measure that was supposed to raise 20 billion does not pass, then you have 20 billion short. Then you have to borrow to cover that 20 billion. So that's why sometimes it has to change. I want to tell you, I will do my very best, by God's grace. If Parliament approves my budget the way it is, I will, to the extent possible, make sure that I live to the commitment I have made to make this budget, the deficit, to come down from the current 5.7 to 4.4. And I want to move it further next year. I have said we are better off building our own resources, using our own taxes. And I have told the people of Kenya, let us be honest to ourselves. We are not overtaxing ourselves. Our taxes are 16% of GDP. Our peers, South Africa, Tunisia, Morocco, and the others, they are at 22, 25, 28% of GDP. If we have to measure up our public goods, if we have to build the roads, if we have to get our education up to standard, if we have to get our health and water and all the other public goods up to standard, we have to pay taxes. We have to agree which areas, can we stimulate so that we do more manufacturing, we do more value addition. By the way, part of the reason why we are in this hole is because our manufacturing came down, from 9% of GDP to 7%. I want to move it to 15%. By the way, our exports as a percentage of GDP came down from 28% 8 years ago to 10% this year. We just stopped exporting. That's why, if you look at the budget this year, we have introduced export and investment promotion levy on goods that can be manufactured in Kenya. Whether it is cement, we have enough capacity to manufacture. Whether it is clinker, we have enough to manufacture. Furniture, steel. Where we have enough capacity to manufacture responsibly as a country, we must stop importation. We must
try,
have,
though, from Kenya.
And that is why, if you look at my whole budget, I am doing two things. Where we cannot avoid, we raise taxes that are paid by the majority of Kenyans, like VAT on fuel. What we have also done, we have reduced RDL, Railway Development Levy, from 3.5% to 2.5%. We have reduced IDF, import declaration fee, from 2% to 1.5%. We have also reduced many other taxes because I am sensitive that we have to be careful how we tax. We must tax responsibly.
Yeah.
It is possible for us to move our tax as a percentage of GDP from 14 to 16%, as I am proposing in the budget, responsibly. We can balance out. That's why we are removing tax on gas. We are adding tax here because we want to balance. And we want to make sure that everybody, for example, let me give you another example. We have reinstated before COVID. Turnover tax was 3%. During COVID, it was taken to 1%. We have reinstated it because COVID is behind us. Because we want also the people in the micro and small enterprise space to pay a little bit of tax. This tax cannot be paid for by a few people. We want to spread it. The same thing, we have also enhanced what we call advanced tax. The tax you pay for your car, for my car, for all these vehicles we are driving, from 3,000, which was put in 2010, now 12 years later, my friend Latif, we've increased the number of roads. We have increased our bill on roads. We've increased it from 3,000 to 5,000 per year. So these are measures, and so we want everybody to carry a bit of the tax. But we have reduced tax on pharmaceutical manufacture. We have reduced tax on manufacture of building products, building materials, so that we can also grow our
Mr.
local.
President, the main